Heather, welcome to the Democratizing SEO podcast. How are you doing today?
Oh, very well. Thank you for having me. Appreciate you.
Thank you for being on. I came across you years ago from when I worked client side. I was looking into like different states of SEO and came across, I forget where I came across it. I think it was a book or something like a YouTube video or something. But I came across the different business states. So inception, build, growth, expansion, maturity. And that led me into a post that you created on Moz talking about the different
Mhm.
SEO maturities. So I thought I've had that in my mind for literally years, and I've always wanted to have a
Wow.
chat with you. Yeah. It's funny how things sort of like stick in your mind. But yeah, this is one of those things that stuck in my mind. I've always wanted to have a chat with you because I think this is something that a lot of client-side SEOs can benefit from. So
Mhm.
I want to, I'm titling this episode "Your SEO Maturity," and seeing how you created this post. In fact, there were two of them on Moz. I thought you'll
Mhm.
be an excellent person to speak with. So. Having said all of that, can you briefly explain what the SEO maturity model is that you've talked about?
Yeah, awesome. Well, first of all, I'm super excited that you found that useful and that you're thinking about that and it stuck somehow.
Oh yeah.
So there's two ways of thinking about a maturity model. So a little bit of background. So maturity models were actually originally developed by the U.S. Department of Defense, and since then they've become popularized in all sorts of different avenues and businesses, and have all sorts of different applications. But essentially, the purpose is to understand or help a business understand where they are today in a certain capability and where they could be in the future and help them to kind of visualize what it's going to take to get there. Right.
Mm,
And a maturity model is a living process, especially in an industry like ours where search is constantly evolving. AI is taking over and we have to fundamentally rethink how we think about search.
mhm.
So it is a living document that has to continue to evolve as we do. But I developed two maturity models at first. I started by creating this one that like looked at all the very specific technical, tactical SEO things a brand could do. And it was fine, but it didn't feel like it was very insightful or new or that it was giving me anything that I didn't already have. So I went a little bit deeper and I learned through my research and interviews and all of this work I did to understand the state of maturity in the SEO business. Talking to all these experts, I learned that the real problems with search programs are rarely our ability to do the technical implementation. We know how to write title tags. We know how to optimize page speed, right?
Yeah.
We do all those things. Where the real problems for SEO success come in is people and process and organizational and culture and integration problems. And
Hmm.
that was a light bulb moment. So I developed a maturity model for how mature an organization's search practices. So this is a tool that not just SEOs can use, but CMOs and
Hmm.
other experts in any discipline can really use to understand whether the organization has all the ingredients or all the tools and all the resources that they need to successfully launch and maintain a great search program. So that's what we
Hmm.
did. We built this model. You're right. It was published on Moz. I delivered it, debuted it to the industry. I believe it was 2017 on the MozCon stage and then
Yeah.
translated into a post. So all of the resources and all the research that went into that are available for any expert to pick up and actually apply.
Yeah, I think it's one of the um, core elements of SEO that every SEO, especially those who work client side, need to understand. Because one of the things I talk about a lot is the different states of SEO. So, for example, a business is going through a migration is at a completely different state to, let's say, a business who's been doing SEO for 8+ years, right? And they've
Right.
already carried out their migration. In fact, they've done several migrations and they have that process already locked in, right? And what I find with a lot of SEOs working client side is they understand SEO, they practice it, right? But when it comes to the implementation, it's always an issue, and it lends that thinking to what you just mentioned, in that the people, processes, all of that is like a different state of SEO, a different level. And I always like to look at SEO almost like in two levels. One level is optimization of our websites, and that is pretty straightforward. And I think that lends itself to hard skills, which SEOs are specialists in. Another level, if you like, a secondary level, is the people optimization. And that level lends itself to understanding that it takes more than SEOs to make SEO a success, right? So the awareness of SEO has to be spread to more than just SEOs. So web development departments need to understand how what they're doing impacts SEO. The same for content, digital PR, etc. And I find that as SEOs, we're pretty close with content copywriters. Just throughout the years, we've been very close with copywriters, but with developers, we're not as close. I think we're getting closer with digital PR folks, but we're still not. I think it's down to SEOs to lead that relationship, and I don't think we're quite there yet as a community. And having something like an SEO maturity model, as you've mentioned, vastly helps with that process, because it gets the organization thinking about SEO and not isolating SEO to just a department that's brought in right before a site launches, for example.
Exactly.
Let's say
I think that's important what you said there about bringing all those different disciplines in. I think SEO is really unique as a discipline because it cannot function in a silo. We are constantly interdependent with other capabilities, development, user experience, analytics, social media, performance content writing, and so on. And so I think you're 100% right about separating the actual optimization of the website or of the experience, just like I split out those two models, versus optimizing the people. I think what we don't realize in the search industry is that we are in a relationship business, not a technical business. Like we can identify the technical things all day, but if we can't persuade someone else that it needs to be updated or empower a developer to do that without throwing them under the bus, then we're not going to be successful. So I think your sort of separation of those things, they're inextricably intertwined, but they are two different things. And I think that's a great point that you just made.
Yeah, it's amazing. The more I speak with SEOs, the more I have this conviction to continue spreading. So the whole idea of this podcast, I've worked both client side, agency side, and I started off client side, and I picked up quite early that you, as an SEO, need to work with the different departments. And I could see the successes when I worked with different departments, and I could see the struggle when I didn't. So it was very clear to me very early on that actually the key to success in SEO is the ability to implement recommendations. And throughout my career, the greatest accomplishment has been working with different departments. And I could see that because I thought in this manner, I could see certain SEOs, colleagues, who didn't quite achieve, they didn't quite work as well as they could have done with other departments, other individuals. And I could see the conflict. I could see the resistance with those individuals with SEO, because SEO is quite a unique thing in that it's not the youngest digital channel. Social media is younger than SEO, but it's so unique, and we SEOs kind of do it a disservice calling it a dark art sort of thing. And we influence non-SEOs to think this way about SEO, and because they think this way, they want to push away from SEO and see SEO as something that SEO handles, and they don't want anything to do with it, right? And that is a massive disservice to not just SEOs, but the business itself. Now, let's
Right. We're
say,
putting this idea in their heads that search is a
yeah,
bad thing, and it is
exactly.
not a bad thing. Is it misused often? Yes. But I don't see what I do as dark arts. In fact, I feel like I have a very strong moral compass on what I'm doing. I actually see us less as manipulators and more as like librarians. We're kind of operating a card catalog or an index of everything that ever was. So
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe I just think about it differently than the people who perceive it as dark arts, but I don't feel like anything I do day to day is shady just because I'm competing.
When I spoke with Mark Preston, he had me thinking for a very long time as the way SEO should regard SEO and influence others to view SEO. He has this idea of looking at it from a business lens. So SEO is not just something that's carried out by one or two individuals in the business. It's something that impacts a business. Literally. So
Yeah.
having the ability to tell the story of, okay, this site is able to be crawled, and because it's able to be crawled, because pages are able to be crawled, the revenue is X amount. And the more you're able to link crawlability to revenue, the better the story you'll be able to tell. And I think it's Chris Green who has an excellent SEO metrics model in place, and he illustrates that ability from crawlability all the way to revenue, and telling that story in a linear approach vastly helps SEO's client side. Now, I'm sure there'll be some folks client side who will be looking at SEO and saying, isn't it the same across industries, retail, finance, travel? Why does one need a maturity model?
Hmm. Interesting. Well, that's a great question. I think as an organization, that maturity model can definitely live in any type of business, right? If you are a business and you are out to make money and you have talent and departments and you need to get something done with marketing, then the organizational search maturity model can work for just about anyone. Now, again, it's a living document. It can be reshaped and customized to that business as needed, but I have used this model and this sort of workshop and data collection and analysis methodology with business to business technology brands. And I've used it with CPG brands in the retail space. I've used it with animal health brands. So like the thinking works because it is not about SEO. I mean, it is and it isn't, which is kind of a confusing thing to say. It is about the organization's capacity and ability to implement that. And because businesses are largely structured in similar ways and have similar problems, this can really shapeshift to exist wherever. But I think every business shares very similar issues. I mean, you talked about storytelling. There's a big gap in many businesses in the ability to translate more technical concepts or translate data into something that is much more accessible and meaningful for those executives. Like the executives have way more on their plate than just SEO, right? They're thinking about profit. They're thinking about profit margin. They're thinking about growth and talent pool retention or recruiting. They've got 100 problems on their plate, and SEO is one part of one bigger problem, which is marketing, right? So as businesses have all of these different things that they're juggling, and they are common across all of these things, it's kind of our job as SEOs to tie our search work back to the business. And I think the maturity model does that. I think it helps do that because it contextualizes what we're doing in search with what that brand is trying to accomplish. Leads, sales, downloads, whatever. They're in business to make money. And if we are not tying our work to that, then we're missing the mark. We're not helping them to care about what we're doing. We're not helping them to be bought in to what we're doing. You also mentioned like resistance and conflict. That's a very common problem in any kind of business. Because I think a lot of SEOs will come in and throw someone under the bus and say, you did it all wrong, and you call their baby ugly. And so you're going to put people on the defense who worked very hard to do what's live today. And you got to kind of give credit for the past that it took to get here while still, navigating those tough conversations about where you need to go from here. Getting stakeholders involved and siloing and fragmentation across a business with a lot of different departments or business units, also a very common problem in a lot of businesses. And these are all things that this maturity model seeks to address. And there's like 5 main components of the maturity model. If I can break those down
Sure. Yeah.
For you real quick, there's process, policy, and procedure. Like, do you have documented, repeatable process for the inclusion of organic search in your larger marketing mix? Not on some separate track, not in a silo, but like, how is it aligning to your campaigns? Are you collaborating with your social media? You know, is it a collective effort, or is it just a bunch of pieces that are all spread around? So ideally, we would want organic search to be like a standard part of any marketing process, because it touches truly every part of a customer's journey. It can have impact in all sorts of different ways. But then there's also like people resources and integration. So does the necessary talent exist at the organization? Is it in scope? Are they talking to each other? And that can be on staff, or it could be an agency. It's, do you have the resources to get the work done? And then there's knowledge and learning. We know that search is this constantly evolving field. We mentioned AI. There's all sorts of new developments that are affecting how we think about search. So that part of the maturity assessment is trying to assess, is the organization knowledgeable? It's weird to say organization. Are the people in the organization knowledgeable about search and what it means to their business and how it connects to their goals? And are they committed to continuously learning and changing their understanding of search as new technologies emerge? Fourth is means, capacity, capabilities. So does the organization budget appropriately for and prioritize search needs? That could be like scoped into a contract, or you have actual dollars allocated to the work, or adequate human beings allocated to the work, or the capacity to complete that work when you have a lot of competing demands. And finally, the 5th element is that planning and preparation. I think every SEO ever has experienced where you get brought in late after something is already launched and someone asks you to SEO something, and you're like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have even created the content to begin with. You know, my search data says this is pointless. So that's another big thing that I think is a big common organizational challenge, regardless of what type of business you're in. Is organic search aligned to business goals? So you were spot on. Is it aligned to brand goals, campaign goals? Is it proactively planned? Or is it reactively added, or is it not included at all? So that's a really, really powerful metric that you brought up. If you're not aligning your search work to something a CMO or a CEO actually cares about, you're missing the mark.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say, let me give a scenario. Let's say I'm a head of search for a retail business. I have 2 SEO managers, right? And who've been working for me for 2 years, both 2 years. I'm now ready to have something more concrete in terms of processes. Is there a place to begin, or should I, out of those 5 areas that you've mentioned, is there a place to start with, or can I start with any area?
Well, I'm a big fan of process wherever it is, but I'm also a big fan of prioritization. That's a really great question. So when I think about like developing process, my instinct first is to look at the things that I'm doing the most often and that are the most repeatable. And that's where I'm going to start, with or without having done a maturity assessment, because those are immediate, low-hanging fruit efficiencies I can probably gain. But when it comes to the maturity assessment, so we do this actual assessment exercise with the client. Even better if I've worked with the client a long time, because then I can get agency perspective and client side perspective. But inside an organization, so I've had my clients actually do this independently within their organizations as well. So they'll ask people in all different departments for feedback on the survey that highlights questions across those 5 topics we just talked about. We collect all the answers and we analyze what we're seeing. So we look at numerically which of those 5 areas is the biggest area of opportunity, but we're also looking at the comments. What kind of language are people using? What are they complaining about? What's working? What's not? So once we've analyzed what we've heard, we have a much clearer picture of where to begin. So that B2B tech brand I was talking about, the big thing, if I recall, was integration with other departments, was just other departments knowing what SEO was doing and SEO knowing what other departments was doing. There was not a great communication flow. There was not a great process for content development. So it felt like content was sort of randomly coming from all different departments and not in a very cohesive, aligned way. So that was their biggest problem. And so our focus was very much on connecting those dots for them and helping them build that process and workflow between their departments. Whereas I've had other brands where it is truly a technical obstacle. Like they haven't invested the appropriate resources in the website itself, or the CMS that they chose doesn't serve their needs anymore and is very limited on SEO. So for that brand, that's where I'm going to start building process and solving problems first. What I like about the maturity assessment is that it kind of forces us to think beyond that sort of old school SEO best practices thing where we start with technical and then we move to titles and metas and then we, I like this because it is much more intentional about aligning search work to the bigger picture, to what the organization is trying to achieve. And we are prioritizing things that are likely to have the greatest impact. People are going to feel that impact faster. Therefore, they're going to be bought into what we're doing in search faster. We're creating allies and advocates along the way. And if we can get those wins early and make people feel great about it, they're going to be a lot easier to persuade, to help, or approve later down the line for other things as well. Prioritization is huge. And I don't think SEOs really do that well, to be honest. I think a lot of times we'll do big audits and then we will put together this long laundry list of SEO tactics that we need to do with no consideration for which ones should come first to have the highest impact on that business goal. And so that's completely overwhelming to a CMO, especially, who does not do search every day. So it's our job as SEOs to do that due diligence, that extra thinking to figure out where should they play first. They can't do all the things at once. They don't have infinite budget. They don't have infinite resources. Where can they start? It's funny. You asked, where should the SEO start? And it led to, where should the business start? It's all the same thing. We got to figure out where the impact is and prioritize there first.
So in terms of time scale, how long would an assessment as such take? Are we talking days or weeks or months?
For the maturity assessment specifically, I've done it in as little as a week, which was intense, but it worked out. So the survey, we like to send that out and give people a week or two to fill that out. So not counting that time. And we'll nudge them a couple times because we really want great turnout. We want it to be like all levels from the highest to the lowest. We want it to be across disciplines from search outward. And we want input from around the organization because we need all those stakeholders bought into what we're doing. Then the analysis maybe takes me a few days if that is all I'm doing, right? And heads down analyzing what I heard. And then we need to take that data though, and we need to turn it around and make sure it tells a clear story that the client can understand and relate to, and that we're able to very clearly and specifically tell the client or the brand or the CMO, you need to start here. Persuasively, based on what we heard, you need to start here. So all told, the ideal for me would be 3 weeks, but push comes to shove, you can get it done in a week or less. And of course, I'm working, I should clarify, I'm working on big multinational enterprise brands that are very spread out and busy and complicated. So my world might be different. A smaller business that's a lot leaner and doesn't have as many barriers or stakeholders, maybe you could get it done in a couple days, right? That'd be great. Go ahead and get started. But I think I also don't want people to feel like they have to do this whole exercise exactly like this to do the critical thinking it takes to make these calls for our clients.
Right. Okay. So let's say it takes 8 weeks, right? Let's just call it 8 weeks. And again, I'm a head of SEO client side. So
Yeah.
I have this strategy, or let's say my vision, right? This project here, I want to push it to the business, and it's going to take 8 weeks to complete. I also have
Mhm.
a technical audit, which will take, let's say, a week. And I also have an on-page or content audit, let's say another week. How do I sell it to the business that this project right here, this maturity model, let's call it analysis, maturity model analysis, is something that is of high priority? How do I sell this to the business, considering it will take 8 weeks of the entire business's time?
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's much shorter in general, but yeah, like
Yeah.
a lot of times clients will say, I don't want to wait for this. I want to get started. I need wins now.
Yeah.
I'll see this a lot with brands that have maybe recently been acquired, that need to prove monetary value very quickly to their new holding companies.
Hmm.
So they are like, love it, want to do the analysis. However, I need proof that this is worthwhile right now. So in those cases, when resources allow, we'll kind of parallel path. So I may get the survey going with the organization so they can be filling that out. And we can be learning about the organization on that track, but we're all really smart SEOs, and we are pretty intelligent about using our tools and knowing when we can make low-hanging fruit changes that are going to net a high impact. There's no reason we can't also be doing those quick wins while this larger work stream is also going on.
Hmm.
The risk is a lot of those quick wins in SEO tend to have small return, right? Like
Yeah.
more often than not, the amount of effort you put in to the search work is proportionate to the amount of outcomes. That said, if you know you're going to be cleaning these things up anyway, you know broken pages need to be redirected. You know that you need schema markup on stuff. You like, go ahead. It's not necessarily going to change the mindset of the organization, though. So you've got the
Mm.
short-term plays with the quick wins, but you also need to be nurturing that long-term strategic lens, because your role, if you were hired to be this agency or this search partner for this organization, your role is long-term sustainable business growth. So you can't lose sight of that big picture for the short-term wins, is what I'm
Mm.
trying to say. Parallel path all day. Just don't get so focused on what is immediately going to net results or check boxes that you lose sight of where the organization is going and where the bigger opportunity is. I think the greatest SEOs will have that long-term vision for where a brand is going and how to navigate them there.
Yeah, absolutely. So for a CMO, let's say, what can they do to champion such an initiative, client side?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've actually found CMOs are pretty easy to persuade because they are so business oriented and because they like that 10,000 foot view, right? They're very, I think the best thing a CMO could do is ask this question. Don't just ask what we should be doing for SEO, but how should we be thinking about search for our company? So challenging those CMOs to think bigger, zoom out, and hold your either agency or your SEO talent accountable to connecting the dots between search and the big picture. Make it clear to them what the big picture is and what you are accountable to achieving, CMO, and then help the search people align their work to that so it is meaningful and relevant. Something we haven't really talked about today is data. And I think that's a really important thing that CMOs need to be thinking about in all things. But search data is this wealth of insight about their customers. I mean, we've got billions of searches every single month in Google alone. We have piles of data that very clearly tell us what searchers demand. As a CMO, I'm thrilled when I see our CMO clients advocating for the use of that data inside their organizations. That is sort of the big selling point for a lot of these other departments and stakeholders to get involved with search. That's the real value we can add. we've got information and insights about our customers that no one else has. And once people realize the power of that data, suddenly all the departments are clamoring for search support and search insights. So that's what I would hope CMOs would push for.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always a great thing when non-SEOs work very closely with SEO, especially when
I love hearing them repeat what we told them.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely love that. Now, in terms of SEO impact, right? I always like to view it in terms of, okay, things that can impact our business is what we do. So it's within our control. It's also within Google's control. So they can change or update their algorithm. It's also within our competitors' control. So they can do something on their website that makes Google favor them over us. Out of those three areas, so businesses own control, Google, and competitors, which would you say is more important for a business to consider? Is it their impact on their own business, what competitors do, or what Google does?
It's an interesting question, because none of them are mutually exclusive. But my personality type suggests that the parts that we can control are where we should spend our energy. But the parts that Google and competitors control is where we should spend our attention. Because knowing what Google controls and what searchers control, I think that's a fourth part of this pie we didn't talk about.
Yeah.
Searchers control a piece. What they ask for and what they demand changes, and that's not up to us. That is just a macro factor we have to live with, just like competition, just like the search engines. So energy into what we control, attention into the things that we don't. That knowledge is going to be very useful to deciding what to do within what we can control. So we often think about a brand's digital portfolio as like owned, earned, and paid assets, digital assets, right? You can own it, you can earn it like search results or organic social, and you can pay for it, paid media, paid search, paid social. So that's kind of a helpful lens for us too, just to think about, are we covering all aspects of that? Have we considered the role of all of these things in that? So I kind of think of it similarly for, have we considered for any major campaign or initiative, have I considered what the search engines care about, what the searchers care about, which is really the first thing I care about, what my competitors are doing, and then what I have to offer or could be doing. I think that's just a great framework for any decision you might make. So that, I guess that's not a great answer to which one's more important. But mentally, I like to really focus my energy on the things that I can control or influence or earn, because I want to take action, you know?
Yeah,
but I just don't want to send people down the road of implementing things before they've done any of the thinking.
Yeah.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah. The reason I ask that question is because I find that as an SEO community, we very much focus on best practices, and they're like very hard skills type of tactics, less so on what's important for a business, right? So a lot of the times, okay, let's say within the SEO community, retail SEO or e-commerce SEO is very much a leading area of SEO. But businesses, they might have critical issues that's outside or separate, should we say, from SEO best practices. And that almost needs one's attention, one being SEO's attention, more so than the best practices stuff. Okay. And I find that I find that because SEOs tend to focus more on industry-led stuff, we don't necessarily inform non-SEOs, other departments, about education across those areas, whether it's within the business issues, what competitors are doing, what Google is doing, and what searchers expect from us, the business. And why, if I were to ask you, why do you think we SEOs focus more on educating SEOs on SEO? What would you
Yeah.
say to that?
I think it comes from a good place. I think we just like each other and like to hang out and like to talk shop and like to get nerdy. But I agree with you. I think we spend a lot more time talking to ourselves about search instead of the people who really probably need to hear from us. And maybe it's because we intuitively know that we can talk nerdy to each other, but we can't really to our CMOs because they're not as interested. Maybe that's it. We're just trying to find our sense of community. But yeah, I think you're right. There's this huge component that we need to do as SEOs to educate our clients or our bosses or our stakeholders. And I think there's a few ways we can do that. The number one way that I like to do when I'm road showing my department, so I run the discoverability department, we have organic search, paid search, and performance content. And I'm constantly road showing what we do inside my organization to other departments. And I learned something very critical here. In my first few years doing this, it was a lot of me talking about what we could do and what SEO is capable of and why SEO is important and blah, blah, blah. And only a few years into doing it that way and not really getting much traction like I would have liked, did I realize, I was up there talking all about us instead of about the people I'm talking to. I wasn't connecting with them. So I fundamentally rethought that. I was like, okay, if I'm going to talk to the user experience department, they don't need to know everything about SEO. They need to know what's in it for them. What can I do for them? So I still covered some essentials of who we are and what we do, but the talking about us was a tiny fraction. And instead, I talked about all these cool SEO things that are specifically relevant to UX and how we could advance their objectives. So it was things like, we can give you all this search data, all these search insights to help you understand what people are trying to accomplish from outside the site, which might help you, UX designer, to determine the information architecture and the navigation of the site and the hierarchy of content. And they're like, whoa, data, great, cool. Ensuring that creative. So when I went and talked to creative, they really couldn't care less about my search stuff. But when I was like, hey, I can give you all this hot goss, secret insight about what people think, and that's going to make you really smart and creative about what creative you come up with. And my job after you come up with the creative is to make sure that everything that you launch and create gets seen. I'm going to help you get more mileage out of your brilliant creativity, your award-winning work, by getting more eyeballs on it through search. It's all about what's in it for them. But there's some other stuff you can do besides just roadshow education. I think case studies are really huge when you get wins or learnings. Like sometimes it doesn't work and you still learn something. Put together a little one-sheeter case study of here's what the hypothesis was, here's what we tried, here's what happened, and here's how we're going to apply it. Or if it was a major project, here was the challenge, here was our strategy, and here's what the results were, right? So proving out the concept in a way that a business can understand and contextualizing it through that lens of here's how it impacted revenue or here's how it impacted the business. That's really helpful for buy-in. And finally, you talked about like all these new developments in the search industry. We send out like a monthly industry news roundup. We just curate the handful of articles that are most relevant to our clients, and we'll send a little digest to them, right? And we'll say, these are the 3 things going on in the search industry you need to know. And here is exactly what it means for your brand. You specifically client or you specifically boss. And I think that's really helpful because it's in plain language. It's contextualized in a way they can understand, but also illustrates to them the importance of having us to serve their search needs, to keep them on the cutting edge so they don't have to do that. It takes it away from just box checking best practices that they could replace and demonstrates the value of our expertise and our talent and our experience in this changing world of search. So 3 good ways. We talked about case studies, education, and news.
How would you value soft skills for SEOs?
Very, very, very highly. I feel like we could teach anybody SEO. I could teach my grandparents SEO, right? It is really about their soft skills and whether they will be successful at it. I think you said earlier, like, you can have all the technical problems in the world, but if you have these organizational issues, then you're not going to be able to get that work implemented anyway. So I think the hard skills are learnable, teachable. Most of us taught ourselves because SEO isn't taught in schools. And I think that's why there is such a strong community around talking to each other.
Yeah.
But the things that make the most phenomenal SEOs, the ones that I see grow in my department and get all the opportunities and shine inside the organization, those are the ones, number one, who build relationships. They are friendly and easy to work with and responsive and collaborative. They build relationships. They care what other people have to say. Those people succeed. Like consistently, that skill set far outweighs any SEO best practices they're doing. Those are replaceable. Soft skills are not. People who know how to zoom out and solve bigger problems and not just get drowned in the myopic details of SEO. Those people who can zoom out and prioritize and think critically about what we should be doing, not just what we can be doing. Those individuals really thrive as well. They get on very well. They can go toe-to-toe with executives really well because that's how executives think. And of course, there's the people who are just phenomenal at like documentation and process and like creating systems that work. Those people really thrive because SEO is such a complex discipline with a lot of moving pieces and connecting other departments and things. So having people who can sort of start to build those workflows and help a larger group operate really smoothly are also very successfully. And none of those things are SEO. They're means to getting SEO done.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say I would have it as adds to that and say it's that level 2 area of SEO I mentioned earlier, which is looking at what affects one's website. If we're sticking with website point of view, so it's not necessarily optimizing websites; it's looking at optimizing people to optimize websites. In your experience, is there a common theme or common something, right, of that you see with organizations or brands who win at SEO versus those who struggle?
Yeah. Oh, man. There are some patterns. There's so many reasons brands could fail. But yes, there are some patterns. And again, I work with like large enterprise organizations. And I think the biggest thing that they run into there is the fragmentation. That's where they fall down. They get so big and they have so many departments and stakeholders and business units that are all measured in different ways and not necessarily talking to each other. So they end up getting in their own way. It just creates a lot of friction and barriers to actually getting things moved through, slow down, bottlenecks, all sorts of stuff. So not for lack of trying or desire to do it. It is just truly the machine is moving too quickly and too fragmented a way for them to really insert SEO well. But that's where we come in to help them do that. I think going back to our prioritization conversation, the laundry list SEOs and best practices checkboxes, I think there's still this idea that that's enough to be successful in search. I get asked for quick wins and low-hanging fruit all the time. And I absolutely get the desire for that from any organization. I want to prioritize quick wins first too. It's just educating them that that's not often reality in search, but it's also not usually sustainable growth when we do that. Like it has a shelf life because anything that's too easy or too low-hanging fruit is probably something that's not going to work for long because anybody could do it, or search engines are going to be like, oh, we don't want you doing that, and we're going to change that.
Yeah.
So prioritization's still still huge. And last thing I think is a big challenge is algorithm chasers. And this is more an SEO problem than an organizational problem. We've got the people who just drop everything and chase whatever they think the latest algorithm update means. Whereas had they been thinking more about that connected customer experience from day one, and put that customer at the center instead of the algorithm at the center, they would never have to worry about the algorithm. It's the people who are chasing like technical, semantic checkboxes. They're looking for easy things because that's what's comfortable, because it's easy to understand, because you can cross it off a list and it feels good. But competitive advantage is doing what your competitors can't, won't, or don't. And I guarantee you they can, will, and do checkboxes. What's harder is doing that critical thinking, that more strategic, big picture cohesion, cross-discipline thinking, not checking SEO tasks off your list.
Exactly. And in those situations, this is where concerning more about the business side of things and the consumer or targeted consumer is far better than industry best practices rhetoric.
Amen. Amen.
Now, VMLY, VMLY&R, your agency. Tell me about this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. VMLY&R. Yes, it is a lot of letters. I know. We are two agencies that have come together, and like a dozen other agencies that have come together to just become this wonderful, powerful network of human beings around the world. So VMLY&R is truly full service, like one-stop shop. We have every marketing capability under the sun, I think, and a wonderful global footprint. So I get to work with my colleagues all around the world. We have about 13,000 team members around the world. Every continent except Antarctica, I'm pretty sure. And about 3,000 of them are with me here in the US. We primarily work on large enterprise brands, ones that are very complex and, like I said, have a lot of business units or have a lot of different priorities or audiences or needs. Multinational footprint is very basically, if it's sticky and complicated, that is where we live. We love it. We are obsessed with the connected customer experience, and that is at the center of every single thing we do, regardless of what department we work in. And I think that makes us, special. It feels special. And these are the nicest, most wonderful people I've ever worked with. So I'm very, very blessed. I've been there about 9 years now. And I don't know. I'll be there as long as they'll have me. It's been great.
Awesome. Now, it's still relatively early in the year. We're still within the quarter of the first quarter. What are you looking forward to this year?
Great question. So thinking about my discoverability group in particular, I think I mentioned I manage the discoverability group at VMLY&R, which is about 70 experts around the world in organic search, paid search, and performance content creation, which is like digital content strategy and creation. So we are thinking about a few things this year. I'm actually really excited about our mission. So I'm going to tell you about our internal mission.
Sure.
Basically, this year is all about elite performance. That's our big theme in the discoverability group this year. Like, we are going to get our swagger back post-pandemic and come back to the market as the strongest, smartest, most capable enterprise discoverability capability on earth. That's my focus. And it sounds heady. But by that, I mean, like, we are going to have elite athletes on our team. And by that, I mean really, really strong search and content experts. I want elite coaches. So our leadership, all those soft skills, we're going to be nurturing those to be the best. And elite teams, like how our search discipline works together, right? So that's sort of our soft skills lens. And then from a more industry-specific standpoint, the opportunities that we're most focused on, we focus on these things for a long time, but now it's really coming to a head this year. So data fluency is an essential skill set, and I don't think we as a marketing industry do this well. And you might have seen my recent rant on LinkedIn about the misuse and abuse of data and predictions and all sorts of stuff, and how that's translated to CMOs and clients can be very deceptive and lead brands in the wrong direction. So I want to make sure we have an elite team that has the most data fluent individuals possible, and that we are leveraging that data in a way that gives us a strong competitive advantage in search. And then on the flip side of that, obviously we are constantly thinking about AI, but this year it's definitely going to be at the forefront, because now all our clients are talking about it too. But we're thinking about all the ways that we can leverage automation and artificial intelligence technologies to gain efficiencies and improved effectiveness for our clients. However, we're also helping our brands navigate what this technology means for them, what it is and is not capable of doing, what the watchouts are. So we're kind of helping steer them through that to make good decisions and not rush too far in one dangerous direction. Like, AI is an important and powerful and wonderful technology, but it needs to be wielded with care and thought. So we're figuring out what that means for automating our work to decrease costs for clients, what it means for improving the quality of our work using more tools and less human power, and how it can free more of us up. I think the stage where AI technologies are right now is much more like task completion is the greatest benefit. But how can that free us up to use our minds in greater ways, doing more strategic, smarter, more creative search work? Because we're not mired down in things that should be repeatable and automatable, you know? And I think a big part of that is also defining our point of view on the balance between artificial intelligence and human contributions. AI is nothing without the human drivers at this point. It is completely dependent on our inputs and our feedback loop, and there's still a human review element needed for anything that comes out of AI to ensure it's on brand, it's tasteful, it's going to be effective, all the things. So that's where our head's at today. It's data, it is AI, and it is being the most elite discoverability capability on earth.
It sounds as though you're going to influence a lot of SEOs to step up. I always say that, one of the great things about SEO community is that we influence each other to improve, right? To optimize ourselves. So, with that in mind, what would you say to an SEO outside of your team, your department, in terms of what they should be looking to improve on this year? I know it's a very broad question, but just a broad response should suffice.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I think no SEO is going to be able to avoid the conversation around what AI means for SEO. So it would be wise of all of us to get smart on what that means and how that might change our industry or how we apply what we do. That's kind of a no-brainer. But I would really urge all of us to really lean into some of the soft skills we talked about this year. I mean, I've been talking about prioritization and maturity for a few years now, but I still think it is a chronic struggle, because I think it is a human struggle to be able to prioritize. So really push yourselves this year to go 1% further. I want you all to dig a little bit deeper, think a little bit more critically, ask harder questions of yourself, like, why is it this way? Or is this really the thing that we should be doing? Because strategic thinking is not just saying what you will do, it's saying what you won't do. And so I want to see a lot more SEOs be able to make those hard choices and be able to make confident recommendations to our CMOs and our bosses that this is the right thing to be doing, not just a thing to be doing.
Well said. Heather, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you online?
Well, thank you, because this conversation was great and my gears are turning. So thank you for closing my week out so strong. But I am online as Heather Physioc. That's PHYSIOC. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, all the things. And of course, check out our company at VMLY&R.com. We're hiring. So if anybody wants to come join this elite team of discoverability athletes, we would love to hear from you.
I'll be sure to have those links in the description for
Thanks.
you. Brilliant. Thanks a
Thank
lot,
you.
Heather. It was a brilliant
Thank you
conversation. You're
so
one of the
much.
people who's influenced me throughout my entire career, so it's a pleasure speaking with you.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's keep the conversation going and let's do it again sometime. If you ever have another topic that we can dig deep into, I love these brainy corporate conversations at any time.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks a lot, Heather. Have a brilliant weekend, and we'll catch up again soon.
Please, thank you. Well, let me know when it all goes live. Thank you so much for having me.
Cheers. Thank you.